People who have met their online friends, what made you instantly regret it? It was supposed to be a date. She had her hand on another guy's leg at the bar. I did a Grandpa Simpson at the burlesque. I enjoyed this description of your quick escape. She flew in town to be a bridesmaid in my wedding, and she decided to cheat on her husband with one of the groomsmen and blame me for that. Because it was my wedding, so that clearly makes it my fault she was unfaithful. How dare you have a wedding on this, the day of my adultery. I invited him over to my house and he shat all over my toilet. Just to clarify, it was not in the toilet, it was on the seat, and a bit of it landed on the floor. Well, that's a conversation starter, jeez. My friends and I met him playing League of Legends and turns out he only lived about an hour away. He insisted on being referred to by his in-game name when in person, and made a big deal of it whenever someone called him by his real name. There's a guy I'm friends with who plays Artworks and role plays him too. Knows every single one of his lines and types them into chat and will say them randomly during Discord while we aren't playing League. Dude is ducking weird, but it's kind of refreshing seeing someone not give a duck and express themselves. Edit, you're all roasting him together now. He found this comment a few hours ago and called me out on it completely. So much for staying hidden. I used to play Counter-Strike 1.6 with one of the funniest and most lively guests I've ever met. He was a linchpin for half a dozen other guys in a friendship group that he welcomed me into. They lived about 200 miles south of me in the south of England. For several years we talked and played games together. He would brighten my day. I've never loved a friend like I loved him. Before I met him, I had no idea he was sick. Like, really sick. He had muscular dystrophy for which there is no cure and is a progressively debilitating disease. His form started by paralyzing his legs and working its way up to his arms and eventually his lungs. It wasn't until a few days before I had arranged for my first ever trip down there that he told me about it. It didn't faze me in the slightest. It made me want to go see him even more. I only saw him in real life twice before he died about a year later. I regret that I couldn't go to his funeral. It was too far away and I couldn't make it. I actually worked with this lady at the time. She was good looking and very flirtatious. Most importantly, we both played World of Warcraft at its prime. She ended up inviting me to join her server, and being a then frisky 20 something, I, of course, joined up. We played for a time and had a good PvP group going. Her regulars. Of course she was still flirty with me in game, and I was back, all in group chat. Either way, we had some great times together slaying players in PvP. Summer comes and it's a company BBQ. I find out she is bringing one of our PvP partners to the event. Cool. It was her husband, a cop. I've been virtually greasy texting her in game in front of him for 3 months. Met a girl I really liked on WoW, but she lived in another country. After a couple of vacations there it turned into a relationship. Made the decision to move and start a new live there with her. After living there for 4 months I slowly realized she was crazy as hell. Huge mood swings paired with a lot of aggression. Ended up getting stabbed in the side by her while asleep. Needless to say, after getting out of the hospital I took the first plane back home. She's still in a psychiatric hospital. What did she stab you with? My new filleting knife. Happy she grabbed that instead of one of the older blunt ones. Luckily she missed any fiddle parts, and it was only a 4-day stay at the hospital for observation. Do dating app people count? Because he told me he was a vampire within 10 minutes. Oh, I have a vampire story. My first boyfriend ever told me he was a vampire. Twilight was very popular at the time, and then asked if I would sacrifice my humanity to be a vampire too. I played around and was like yeah sure, and then the duck bit my neck LMFAO. Edit, wow an award. Thank you. Shout out to Brandon the alleged vampire for making this possible. Same thing happened with my boyfriend at 14. This was way before Twilight was a thing though. He never bit me, but he was very dedicated to the character. I played along because I mainly wanted to see where it went. We got back together for about a year or two in our late 20s, and he was mortified by his teenaged fake vampirism. Met up with a friend I met in WoW. I fell down steps. Instead of helping or asking if I'm okay, she laughed hard, like not breathing, on the floor gasping for air, seal clapping hard. We've been friends for like 8 years ever since that, and she still reminds me. She probably just didn't want you to cry. It works on babies. We went to a convention and he drunkenly told me and my boyfriend that he wished we weren't together so he could sleep with me. It was very awkward, and he's lucky my boyfriend, now husband, is a patient man. I'm guilty of drunkenly saying that to some friends. You're right, it's really awkward, but for me, it wasn't in the moment, more like the next day, and every day after was super awkward. When I was 19 I jumped on a flight to meet a friend I had known for about 4 to 5 months. We both went through family bereavements and were a shoulder to cry on for each other via the phone or internet, and we just decided to meet for a few days in a country between us. Until then everything had been perfect. She was the coolest girl, really smart, the kind of person you want to be around all the time. When we met things started great, but a day later she confessed, "You're not what I expected." What? 19-year-old and not very confident. This knocked me sideways. I don't know, just, you seem different. I never hid who I was before we met, was completely open, and it put a real sour taste on the rest of my time with her. Instead of chatting non-stop and watching Jackass on TV in the hotel at night, we went quiet and straight to sleep, ate in silence. I put as much effort as I could into it, but I still never got to the bottom of how I was different. We went our separate ways, text for a few days then never spoke again. He got freakishly obsessive and possessive. Met online through a fandom. After a few years the fandom pretty much fell apart, but a handful of us stayed friends because we actually had a fair amount in common. D was very normal, the rest of the group seemed to love him. About 4 years after just being online mates we met in person. It went fine. We interacted a lot on FB and Instagram. I hit a really busy period in my life, but managed to squeeze in a Christmas get together at my place for my little group of friends including D. After that my online activity decreased drastically due to being busy, and when I managed to get on FB I noticed that most of the group were no longer friends with D. Weird, but whatever. I checked my messenger and saw message after message after message asking why I wasn't responding. What was I doing? Could we arrange a meetup etc? I explained I was super busy and it was also coming up to the anniversary of my mum's death, so just give me some time and we'll see about meeting up another time. He said, "Oh yeah, I forgot about the anniversary, you can have that day, but I expect a response after that." I blocked him. So he sent email after email after email asking me, "What is your ducking problem? What the duck do you think you're doing etc?" So I blocked his email too. After 3 very peaceful weeks there was a knock on my door. It was D, and he had a 6-page letter detailing why we had to be friends. I shut the door, used an anonymous email thing to tell him if he contacted me again / showed up at my door I would call the police. Went on FB and told everyone, including the 2 remaining mutual friends, about it all, and could the mutuals not share anything about me / my life and actively discourage him from attempting to make contact. The friends who had long since unfriended him started messaging me that they stopped talking to him because of how creepy he was being in PMs about me, always asking if they knew what I was doing. Had I talked to them? Was I seeing anyone? Was I actually busy? Because he was convinced wasn't, etc. In return I told them how he'd been trying to convince me to stop being friends with them because according to him they were all sorts of horrible things, and that they were incredibly jealous and hated how close he and I were. I assumed he was just butthurt because they stopped talking to him, so was just making up a bunch of crap about these people who had always been perfectly nice to me. One incredibly weird occurrence just before this all happened was me telling a mutual on FB that I was heading to the aquarium in London with my daughter. Mutual friend was also in London that day with their daughter, and maybe we could grab a coffee / let the kids play in the park for a bit. I checked my messages later that evening and he was incredibly upset because he'd waited at Farringdon station exit for 2 hours so he could come to the aquarium too. And I didn't show up. We did not get off at that station, but one that was 2 stops after and closer to where we were going. I haven't heard a peep in over a year. He has apparently deleted his FB and Instagram and thankfully just disappeared. I met my old friend on Roblox about 3 years ago, but he turned out to be like 40. You did say it was your old friend.